73 East Broadway. This is a live edition of the Jake Feinberg Show, coming to you on Power Talk. Please go to our website, powertalk.live, and download our free app to your smartphone so you can stream all of our live local programming, including Solomon on Blast, the Jim Parisi Show, and yours truly, the Jake Feinberg Show. We can't thank you enough for making us part of your day today, and it's just really funny how the universe works because I don't watch a lot of TV. I try to unplug, especially in times like this. But inevitably, every time I turn on one of the cable news networks, I wind up seeing this cat's face on TV. And there's an aura about this guy, an authenticity that makes you want to listen to him. And you recognize that even within the age of cognitive dissidence, he is trying to provide some clarity as it relates to the law, as it relates to morality, as it relates to fairness and love, also while seeking justice as a lawyer and as a commentator and as a father and a husband. Comes from a great line family, Cherry Hill product. Elie, Honig, welcome to the Jake Feinberg Show.
Jake, thank you. That is the single best introduction I've ever gotten. I'm going to write that down. Thank you so much.
I can transcribe. I'll transcribe it for you as well. I mean, let's put that on some. Put it in a letter somewhere. Frame it on the wall. But
yeah.
No,
forget about the degrees and the.
Yeah, well, that's. I mean,
that's so much better.
Here's the thing. I mean, what can you honestly say? Because I do have an issue with the academy per se. Maybe I'm just jealous. Maybe, I went to BU. I don't know if I really took advantage of my education the way I wanted to. But at Harvard, you got a law degree, and I just was wondering what you can say that you can take into the world of media and or law that is relevant aside from the book learning. What did you learn that is intuition, instinct, and gut level that you can take into to real application from school?
So, great question. So, Harvard was an important part of my life. I went to law school there, spent 3 years there. But understand, please, before that, I hardly left New Jersey. I mean, I'm from South Jersey, as you said, from Cherry Hill. I went to public schools all the way through. I went to Rutgers University, our great state university in Jersey. I never even stepped foot onto Harvard until my first day there. You didn't go tour back in the day or anything. Right now, every kid goes and tours 10 colleges. Right. I never saw the place.
Wow, that's remarkable. That is remarkable.
Yeah. Oh, it's a different era, right? It was late 90s. I was there from 97 to 2000. I love the place. I feel very deeply connected to it, and I got a great education there. But there's no magic to it. They didn't teach us some mystical thing that's any different than what students are learning at Rutgers Law School or Seton Hall Law School or Arizona State Law School. The best thing that really happened for me at Harvard Law School was I guess I started to find my voice in a way, which was I was surprised when I got to law school. I thought everyone who went to law school wanted to practice law and wanted to be in a courtroom. Not so. A lot of people at the time wanted to just go make money in .com or banking. And even people who want to practice, a lot of them wanted to be corporate lawyers. And so I quickly found that the courses that sort of resonated with me most were evidence, the trial workshop where we got to learn from some greats, and then doing clinicals. I mean, one of the defining experiences I had was working for Harvard Defenders, where you got to represent poor people in low-level criminal cases in Massachusetts courts, in Dorchester and South Boston, and really mixing it up. And I loved that. That really sort of lit me up and struck a chord for me, and that's why I guess it was 4 years into my professional career. I spent the beginning of my career at a big law firm in D.C., which was a great experience, but about 4 years in, I landed at the U.S. Attorney's Office in Manhattan and was prosecuting real criminal cases.
Well, and just for the record, we went to college. We're the same age because I went to BU, but I did go. I think that was somewhat. I mean, Harvard. It's kind of the cream of the crop. So it's like, do you really need to go and see it in advance? Maybe not. I think that's interesting that you didn't even go. I mean, here's the question. I want to step back for a minute because, I really try to unplug and I fail at it all the time because it's just so much a part of our existence today. But, did you see what were the levels of corruption within the local justice system in Dorchester and Jamaica Plain. I used to go and check music out in those places and, dig through record stores. And I mean, the people were really pretty cool, but you knew that there was a street scene, for lack of a better word. There was but I mean, as a lawyer, did you become disenchanted with the courtroom because there wasn't always justice?
No, I didn't. If anything, I think I probably had the opposite experience of we represented. There was probably 100 students who did that clinical, maybe more. And so you would not only would you have your own cases, but you'd follow your classmates' cases, and your supervisor.
Sure.
Eventually, you become a supervisor. And I got to see justice sort of for better or for worse. And I saw cases where I thought justice was done. I mean, we managed to get a lot of those petty cases, silly cases that never should have been brought, thrown out before the person had to go through the ringer of the criminal justice system. On the other hand, you don't win them all. You can't win them all. I can't say at that low level I was operating at, I saw what I would consider to be widespread corruption. I remember dealing with some local cops who I found to be really stubborn and frustrating. But that's part of the ballgame. I mean, later on, as I sort of really became part of the higher level systems, I saw some things that I thought needed to be fixed. But at that low level, what it showed me was we really do have a process. I mean, I would go into some of these cases not knowing if I was going to win or lose. Can I give you one quick story that I remember?
We do not deal in platitudes here, so go to work.
Yeah.
Dive deep.
So let me give you one. So one of my clients, I can't remember, his first name was Ron. I guess I don't remember his last name, but I probably wouldn't say it anyway. He was a badly disabled guy, but his own fault. He years before had driven while very, very drunk. He was an alcoholic and got in a horrible one-car accident. And by the time I met him, he was just in a wheelchair, could not really speak. He had a caretaker who could kind of interpret what he was saying. He could make noises, but he couldn't speak. Miserable shape. He was a quadriplegic. He could barely do anything. But he smoked a lot of weed. That's what he did. And his landlord wanted to get him out of there.
Right. He was just fumigating the entire place. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he scared the other tenants, and he smoked weed all day. And so the landlord called the cops on him, and he got arrested for weed because guess what? He had weed.
Right.
And I did my background on the judge. I forget what they were called. I think maybe they were like magistrates, but some lower level of judge. And everyone, I still remember I did the most important thing. I went there. I went to the courthouse, and I watched the judge, and I talked to some of the lawyers, and the consensus was she's brutal. You got a terrible judge. She has no interest in sympathy, no nothing. And somehow or other, I don't remember how I ended up in her chambers. And this is actually kind of improper. You're not supposed to have a one-on-one conversation with the judge without the other party there.
Right.
But whatever. Forgive me. I was 23 years old. And I ended up in the chamber with the judge, and I remember just chatting with her a little bit and telling her I had a case coming up in front of her. We didn't actually talk about the case, so I guess it wasn't unethical. And then a couple of days later, I went back in, and I knew that I had nothing except for sympathy. And we made a bald sympathy plea. I just said, Judge, you can see my client. He's got every disability and handicap you can possibly think of. If this charge issues, he will get evicted because that's what the guy needed. The landlord needed a hook. He needed a criminal charge to throw the guy out. He said, he will be evicted, he will be on the streets, and he will die. I'm not trying to be melodramatic here. Let's just be realistic. He will die on the streets. That's it. And the judge was like, do you have a legal defense? I was like, nope, just telling you how this goes. And not all my stories have happy endings, but this one did, at least temporarily. She said, yeah, I just don't see this here being in the interest of justice. She threw the charge out. Now, I'm sure the guy got rearrested for 3 weeks later or something.
I'm sure he did.
But it was kind of a lesson for me that sometimes the best story wins.
Talking to Elie Honig here, he's already on fire. I mean, can you talk a little bit about the like inside the courtroom? I think that the O.J. Simpson trial did away with TVs in the courtroom for a long time. I mean, forever. But there is this sort of like mystical quality, I think, that you must take on and approach it almost like a boxer, in the sense that you take on a case, you have some things in your favor, some things are gray area, some things you got to figure out how to triage. But can you talk about a time? I mean, there's only two letters that separate magic and music, and granted, you actually just talked a little bit about magic, where the judge said you have no legal defense. Okay, no problem. I'm going to throw out the charge. But did you? Can you talk about a time in the courtroom when the chips were really stacked against you, and you really had to improvise on the fly, and it came through you from the heavens, and it came through.
It's a great question. So understand this, and just so your listeners understand, I spent 14 years of my professional career as a prosecutor.
Right.
8.5 years I was a federal prosecutor, and then 5.5 years I was a state prosecutor. And as a prosecutor, and I have no problem saying this, the deck is very much stacked in your favor. Look, you have a high burden of proof. You have to prove cases beyond a reasonable doubt, and you have to get a unanimous jury of 12 people. Think about how hard that is.
That's
to get
hard.
12 people to agree on anything, right? What pizza toppings do you want? Good luck getting all 12 to agree. So it sounds hard, and it is hard, but prosecutors win the vast majority of trials. The numbers vary, but in the federal system, it's always over 80%. In the state system, it's a little harder, maybe 60, 70%. But there are various reasons. I mean, the first one being you get to pick your battles. If you look at a case and you say the evidence isn't there, you don't charge it, and you don't end up in the ring, so to speak. So you're picking your battles. You have vast resources. When you're a Fed, you have the FBI at your disposal. When you're with the state, you have the state police at your disposal. So you usually, quote unquote, win. But a couple things to know about, and I tried a bunch of cases. And trying a case is I think you mentioned something like a boxing. Like I used to make that analogy. It's grueling. And it's punishing, but it's also kind of the rush is addicting, right? Because you have this trial coming. It's like your day to your fight, and you prep for it, and you train for it, and you get ready, and then you go in, and you're working 21-hour days and 19-hour days, and you're stressing. And I used to lose weight. I used to lose 15 pounds during a trial. I mean, wow. I'd look like skeletal. And then at the end, I mean, what jobs in the world, at the end of your performance, does somebody come out and go, you win and you lose, like boxers, MMA fighters, and trial lawyers, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, rarely do you have that, right? Rarely do you have that moment of you guys are, someone raises your hand and not the other guy's hand. So it's enormously stressful. But one of the things that I really came to realize as I did this, and it's the kind of thing like anything else, you have to get the reps in. And the more reps you get, the better you get at it. But I think you talked about this, is there's no science to it. I mean, yeah, you have to know what you're doing technically. You have to know how to get a document admitted in evidence, that kind of thing. But so many times you just have to sort of rely on your gut and read the jury and see where they're at. And I'll give you one specific example. So we charged a mobster, the first mafia case, and I did mafia cases. I became chief of organized crime in the Southern District of New York. And so I tried real, you think Goodfellas and Godfather, that I did those cases for real.
Oh my, dude, I just watched it last week out of nowhere. Go ahead. That's unreal. Yeah.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Good. So the
I'm
first
locked in.
mobster I ever tried was a guy named Ciro Perot. Okay, so let me just paint a picture real quick here. Ciro was about 80 when we tried him. Old school guy. Not flashy, just had his style. Little guy, white hair. The rumor was that he used to be a great ballroom dancer. He had a certain sort of elegance about him, right? But he got away. He was a captain in the Genovese family, meaning he was a supervisor. He was a made guy. He got made in like the 40s or something. And a captain is a supervisor, so he had his own crew, and he laid low. He was old school. He didn't go in front of the cameras. He didn't do the John Gotti, front page of the tabloid. He just made a fortune. He barely ever left his social club where he took care of business in Queens. So we arrest him, and I remember getting his rap sheet, meaning the list of all the crimes he ever had, and flipping through it. His most recent arrest had been in 1955 for burglary. So this guy went 50-plus years without ever getting arrested. So we're trying him, and it's not a murder, and it's not a violent case. It's an extortion, loan sharking case. So we don't have that sort of gut punch for the jury where you really get them to care that much. And one thing we had done is we had taped Ciro. We got a bug. Every Tuesday and Thursday night, Ciro and his crew would have dinner at the same table at Don Pepe's restaurant. If anyone knows Queens, it's near the airport. They sat at the back left table in Don Pepe's. And so we got a wiretap in there from a judge's permission. And so we had hours and hours of these guys sitting at the dinner table talking. And we played those tapes for the jury because a lot of times they're talking about crimes. But here's the problem, and I realized this as we were playing these tapes, the first trial. The jury started to fall for this guy. The same way you watch Goodfellas, you watch Sopranos, and you kind of find yourself rooting for Tony Soprano.
Absolutely.
I watched him, and I listened to the tapes, and I said, oh, no. they like him. He's charismatic. He's talking, right? He's telling funny stories. And even though the book would say, well, you have the guy talking about crimes on tape, play him for the jury, I realized, oh no, they like him. They like him. And that case went bad for us. And he was almost acquitted. The jury hung, meaning they couldn't come out unanimous each way, but it was 2 people out of the 12 wanted to convict, 10 wanted to acquit him. Now, you get to retry a guy if you want when you have a hung jury. We did retry him, and the one adjustment we made is we cut out 90% of those tapes. And we cut out any tape where he was telling a funny story or being likable, and we only played the couple select tapes where he was just kind of gruffly talking about crimes. And completely different atmosphere, completely different environment. They did not fall in love with him. They didn't find him charming or funny, and they convicted him in about a day, and he went away for most of the rest of his life. He actually lived a couple of months after he got out of jail, and then he died. But that, to me, sort of drove home the lesson that you have to get a jury in the gut as much as you have to get them sort of intellectually.
Absolutely. And actually, I mean, the fact that you went at it again after the hung jury, I mean, people would say that's adjustments, but part of it's also changing people's mindset. Or, I mean, again, you didn't have the same jury, but it's like that likability. Tell me a little bit about this. I mean, this existential crisis, which I know is physically imperiling a lot of people, the coronavirus. I also feel is a psychic existential crisis. If you just look at the Amazon forests burning down, that's the lungs of the world. That's Grandmother Earth right there. And you're looking at people that they're being constricted with lungs. They can't breathe. I mean, there's a symmetry, there's an analogy there, an analogous thing. I mean, we're hemorrhaging here, but it's gotten so. I'm curious as to if you are in favor of what they are doing now with incarcerated low-level offenders as far as they have to kind of get rid of, put them back into society. But what is, putting this aside because this is unprecedented, how would you alleviate what's going on in our prisons today?
Yeah, it's a good question. Later on in my career, when I was with the state, I became heavily involved in New Jersey's effort to reform its bail system, reform its whole criminal justice system. So, first of all, with this effort, which, as you say, is extraordinary, but you're seeing now with the coronavirus crisis spreading, you are seeing prosecutors in various states, it's happened in California, Ohio, New York, New Jersey, agree to release of certain prisoners. And think about it. I mean, it's almost impossible to think of a more dangerous physical scenario for the spread of coronavirus. I mean, I've spent a lot of time in prisons. Everyone knows they're crowded, they're overcrowded. You kind of have to be in one to understand it. I mean, They're claustrophobic, and they are overcrowded like you can't believe. So you have people just packed in, and even if you don't care about prisoners, you should, but even if you don't, prisons, in every prison in this country, you have dozens or hundreds of guards and staff and administrative workers who go in there to work, and then at the end of the shift, they go home. So these are real potential breeding grounds for this disease. And so I think prosecutors across the country that are starting to release people carefully, not indiscriminately, are doing the right thing. They're looking for nonviolent offenders. They're looking for people who've not yet been convicted, who are awaiting trial. They're looking for older people because stats and I think common sense tell you that once a person gets to be above 60 or 65 years old, they stop committing crime. I guess except for Ciro Perot. Unless you're the mafia.
The mafia, no, that never stops.
Right. But other than that, very rare circumstance. So I applaud prosecutors who are doing that, and my former colleagues at the New Jersey Attorney General's office have done that. Now, the U.S. Department of Justice has not done that yet. They've said they're considering their options. We'll see where they come out. But look, if you can reduce your population – and by the way, it doesn't mean the charges are getting dismissed. It just means they're getting let out while they're awaiting trial. In this extreme time, then I think that's the right thing to do, and I applaud prosecutors who are doing that. But again, careful. You can't let out a child sex offender. You can't let out a murderer, an armed robber. But there are plenty of people in prison and jail right now who are not charged with violent crimes like those. More broadly, when I was here in Jersey, we reformed in a systematic way our entire bail and criminal justice process. Essentially what we did is we threw out money bail. in the old system, in most systems, in most states, when someone gets arrested, the judge sets a money amount. If the guy is rich enough to post it, usually through a bail bondsman, he can get out while he's waiting for trial. And if not, he gets stuck. And the problem was you had some dangerous people who were able to post the money and get out. But really the broader problem was you had poor people. You had people. We did a study in New Jersey, not my group, but the Drug Policy Alliance which is a very credible group, did a study that showed that 12% of our population in prison in New Jersey in 2014 were people who had not been convicted of a crime. They were stuck on bail. They could not post bail of $2,500. Imagine that. Imagine not being able to post $2,500 to walk out of jail. And so that's just unjust. And we got rid of the money bail system. We a lot of resistance, a lot of opposition. We got sued a million times. The bail bonds industry threatened us and all sorts of dirty tricks. But we got it done. We changed the law. We changed the state constitution. And now that decision, do you have to wait in jail or not, is not based on money. It's based on risk, an assessment of how risky is this person. What's the likelihood they'll commit new crimes? And as a result, our prison population, our state prison population, pre-trial, is down 30% in just the 2.5 years since we've done this. So we made and by the way, our crime rates and violent crime rates are down as well. So I do think that there's a lot of reform that needs to be done. I think we've done it here in Jersey. California actually recently just passed a very similar law. New York passed a law that I don't think they did it right, but a lot of states are trying to do this as well, and I think it's an important issue that people need to keep working on.
Who was the cagiest defense lawyer you ever went up against?
Ooh, that's such a good question. I think there's so many.
Because I feel like I would have been, if I could have actually had the discipline to get through law school, I would have been a really great change up pitcher. I would have been very difficult to deal with on the defense side. But I'm just curious about, because you cover all bases, but I'm just curious if there was always somebody who was just a quote unquote thorn in your side.
I wouldn't say thorn in my side.
I don't mean it in a bad way. I just mean like a cage.
I know what you mean. Yeah. I had great relationships. I still have great relationships with defense lawyers. They have the hardest job. Their job is so difficult. First of all, public defenders. And the public defenders in New York and New Jersey are so good at what they do. People often would get assigned a public defender and then fire them. Oh, I don't want to get a public defender. I want to pay for a guy. And then they pay for a guy who's half as good. Public defenders, give them all the credit in the world. They make no money.
Right.
They have huge caseloads, and they're so good at what they do because they have those reps, because they've been in the system. And so I have all the respect in the world for federal public defenders, for state public defenders. It's incredible. It's incredible, really, what they do. In terms of lawyers who I had a hard time with at trial, I'm gonna give you two.
Yeah.
One was a guy named Charlie Carnesi, who actually passed away a couple years ago, older guy. I tried John Gotti Jr. later in my career, and Charlie represented John Gotti Jr. all through all of his trials. And Charlie was not a legal scholar. I don't think I ever saw a brief that he did. I don't think he wrote briefs. Now, kids at home, don't try that. You have to write briefs, but it just wasn't his style.
He was riffing off the top. He had the reps,
right.
So he was just in his head.
Yes.
Yeah.
And Charlie's skill was, he found the angle that would appeal to normal people. He was very plain spoken. He didn't do the heretofores and wheretofores, and he talked like a normal Queens guy to a New York jury, and they felt like he was just kind of there. He was representing vile people, but he did a good job of getting the jury to focus on him, not the defendant. And we would always say, "Look, it's about the defendant." But he just understood what made people tick, and there was. So I think that approach can really work. You got to find that angle and excuse me, and really sort of connect with people. I did another trial with a guy named Jeremy Orden, who also did a really good job of sort of picking our case apart piece by piece. But I wouldn't say cagey, because cagey, I think, suggests some level of dishonesty. I think just more methodical in the way that he went about picking our case apart. So, man, defense lawyers are really, really good at what they do. It's really, really – every trial is a battle. So, and you see a lot of interesting different styles.
Well, Elie, we have a game on this program called Name That Voice. I don't expect you to know who this is, but I want you to pay attention to the content. We'll come back and break it down.
Okay, name that voice. Did you say?
Yeah, this is it's Name That Voice, but I'm more interested in the content. We'll come back and break it down.
All right, I'm going to try to name the voice too.
Well, I mean, I ended up, going into rehab, and I had to, move out of New York. And, I had been playing, under the influence for so long that I wasn't sure what was going to happen, but, because of when I finally did get, go back and play, I mean, I have good friends in the business, and being able to go back to music straight and still and love playing and be in the same situations with people and not use anymore. I mean, it was good, and it was great to have that. I could have lost it all, and I didn't. And so, being able to come back to music, looking back on it, helped save my life. Drugs, I don't think they make you play better, but they can ease whatever pain you're going through to help you be able to concentrate on something that makes you feel good.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
I have a guess.
I love you. I love the fact you're even willing to guess, because it's way out of left field. But go ahead.
Let me try it. So it's funny, because at first I was thinking acting, because he said play, return to New York to play, but then he said music. Oh, all right. My guess is, could it be Robbie Robertson?
Elie, no, but that's such an interesting guess. I mean, my one funny, when I tried to get him on the program, well, that's a whole other story.
Yeah.
That was a guy, a drummer, Steve Gadd. Do you know Steve Gadd?
No, I don't.
So, I mean, Gadd is one of the most recorded drummers of all time, and all the Paul Simon records. Dude, he's to just put it in perspective. Up until in this century, I mean, he was the live touring drummer for James Taylor, Eric Clapton, and Paul Simon. But I mean, all types of music, and truly a junkie at a certain point in his life. And what, part of my show is, one of the L's of my show is life, and that is overcoming adversity. And I look at you as somebody, I mean, you look like you could play a TV lawyer. You're a very competent, you're an amazingly competent lawyer. You've had a great pedigree, and I know Ben, I know the family's full of love. But I ask you, can you talk about a time in your life when you surrendered, or where you faced some adversity, and ultimately how you overcame it, how it made you just a stronger person?
Oh my goodness. I really, I have to tell you, I don't know that I have. I don't, and I say that because
that is bless you, brother.
I mean, I don't want to pull out some lame thing because
right.
When
no, I dig. I mean,
and I know. Yeah. Listen, I in all respect have been remarkably lucky. I come from a great family, parents, great set of parents, still together, two brothers. I didn't go poor or anything like that. I got to go to good schools, and I've never had any problems with. And the reason I don't want to just sort of come up with something is because that clip you played. I mean, I know so many people who've struggled with either addiction or mental health, and a lot of them are people you meet from being a prosecutor. It's one of the great things about being a prosecutor is you meet all kinds of people, and you don't just meet. You work with, you deal with all kinds of people. I mean, I've put witnesses on the stand who have that speech that Gadd gave about being a drummer. I mean, I know exactly what he's gone through because I've put so many witnesses on, dealt with so many people, victims, witnesses who dealt with that kind of addiction problems, those kind of lows, and bounced back. And so it's I have a lot of respect for people who are able to do that. So I really can't say I've ever had to live through anything near that kind of adversity or anything like that. But one of the great things, I remember when I interviewed for the job with the Southern District of New York, my first prosecutor job was scary, and you have a 1 in a million shot of,
right.
You have a long shot of getting it. And the U.S. attorney at the time, Dave Kelly, asked me, why do you think you'd be good at this job? And luckily, I wasn't ready for that, but I didn't give what would have been a dumb answer like, oh, I'm really smart or I'm hardworking. I said, because I think in this job you have to be able to deal with all kinds of people, and I think I'm good at that. You have to be able to deal with judges, with criminal defendants, with witnesses who are scared out of their minds, with FBI agents, with local cops, NYPD, with defense lawyers, like we just talked about, with other prosecutors. I mean, it's hard to think of a job where you have to deal with as broad a swath of humanity as when you're a prosecutor. And I said, I think for whatever reason, I'm able to do that. I'm able to listen to people and work with people, whether they're a lifetime criminal who now wants to become a witness or a federal appellate judge. And I just remember when I gave that answer, he gave me a look, or he had some kind of reaction that made me think, oh, I might get this job.
Wow.
I guess it's a good way for somebody who hasn't had to live through adversity to still experience that side of the human condition.
Well, I mean, some would say that the biggest adversity you ever faced was being on the bench with Marshall Cressman when you guys were coaching basketball in Cherry Hill with Ben and Evan. I mean, can you talk a little bit about that kind of? What was Marshall like as a head coach?
Marshall's a great coach. He's a great guy. So
I love, dude. That coaching unit is intense. I mean,
it's a good coaching unit. And let me just say, Evan Cressman is an excellent player. Ben was a good player too. Ben was like gritty. Evan had a little more.
Ben's a gritty cat. Yeah, no. Evan screwed up. He went to summer camp to go chase tail instead of playing summer league. He made a mistake. No, but I really want to. This is what I want to know, because the truth is, your honesty is refreshing, because the truth is, like, you know, Gad, it was an extreme, and quite frankly, if he didn't have friends in the business, he may not even be here today. I think the part that I left out was that he's like, I got 4 grandkids, I got 8 dogs. I mean, he had a rebirth, a second chance on life. But, you know, so bless you for not having to, and I hope that continues for you.
I'm sure it won't forever, but
you know, I just need to know this for my own, so I can sleep well at night. I mean, can you talk about what made Marshall Cressman an effective head coach?
I think he was a good instructor. He was patient. You know, he's a soft-spoken guy. Never got frustrated.
Let me tell you, man. I've seen him, like when Evan was playing drums in the garage. I mean, he went all he lost his mind. So I've seen him become unhinged.
Maybe basketball is his zen place. Yeah. Like Phil Jackson of the YMCA.
But were you drawing up plays? I mean, what were your defined roles on that team? I mean, when Evan told me that today, I said I had to bring.
Marshall was a grown-up. Marshall was a grown-up. I was probably 17, and Ben and Evan were probably 11 or something. No. I was just in high school at the time. No, I don't think we drew up plays. I think we just rolled the ball out. This was before we weren't doing analytics on the kids. We were just like, this kid's pretty good. This kid sucks.
What do you think, Evan had?
Let's try to get everyone in.
Did he favor his son, or did he treat him harder than most?
No way. No, he wouldn't do that. That wasn't his thing.
Yeah, I know.
I mean, I do think Evan was our star, though, if I remember right. I think Evan was the best player on the team, legitimately. So,
this is beautiful stuff. You know, I just putting back on your political cap, because you were front and center, you know, kind of all the time in the impeachment trial, just because of your legal expertise and because of the nuances of everything going on in the legal sparring. But I want to ask you, because aside from what's going to happen in terms of the panels and investigating how this was missed or not contained, the truth is this. I mean, the Democrats, you know, everybody wanted to impeach Trump. They were on a mission to do that, and they did the best they could. And the Republicans and Trump were doing everything to throw disinformation at the public, or whatever you want to say. And the Senate, acquitted him, or they let him off. They didn't convict him. And I wonder, truthfully, if that trial had, I guess here's the point. Would anybody have really cared about coronavirus regardless? I mean, clearly the answer is no. They were focused on the politics of it. And I wonder if the impeachment trial didn't take place, do you think it would have been any different?
Well, let me say this. I reject the talking point that we're hearing from some of the president's supporters that that impeachment distracted him from doing his job or something like that. I mean, first of all, the timetable just doesn't measure up. I mean, that impeachment trial was over in early February. There were warnings sounded a little bit before that, but well beyond.
Right. He was at Mar-a-Lago playing golf. Yeah, he was doing his.
What job requires? I mean, when you're the president, you have to be able to do two things at once. You have to be able to do 100 things at once. And if you're so taken with defending yourself in the impeachment trial that you just couldn't function in any other capacity, then I think that's an indictment, not technically, but that's a negative trait, and that's a failure by the president and people around him. You have to be able to focus on multiple things at once. So I really don't buy that idea that impeachment distracted people or anything like that. The timeline doesn't measure up. I don't think the facts support it. And I think it's a cop-out. It's convenient. It was predictable that some people would say that. So I'm not buying it. And I think with respect to the impeachment itself, I mean, look, in a way, I do think Trump forced the Democrats' hand because it was clear to me, I think it was clear to most people, that the Democrats were not going, the House was not going to impeach Donald Trump based on the Mueller report. Nancy Pelosi was coming up with all manner of, I think, weak excuses why they couldn't, we can't, we need more evidence, blah, blah, blah. She just didn't want to do it politically. But then when he went and called Ukraine and basically said, you know what I just did with Mueller? I'm going to double it now. I think he left them no choice. And I think Democrats and Adam Schiff and Nancy Pelosi were under no illusion at any point that he was going to be removed from office. But I do think at a certain point you just have to do your constitutional duty and let the chips fall where they may. I mean, I equate it to when you're a prosecutor, if you have a case that you think is righteous and provable and supported by the evidence, but it's going to be a tough trial and I might lose it, you bring the case and you present it and you let the jury do what they will. That's our process. That's our system. That's the way it's supposed to work. You're not supposed to be doing this calculation of, well, will I win or not? So that's sort of my bigger picture look at the impeachment now that it feels like we're years removed, but we're probably about 6 weeks removed from it, amazingly. Time is moving very slow.
I mean, yeah, I mean, and it's, how long have you been doing, like where you've been, like for instance, commentary on political networks and things? I mean, like Bridgegate, for instance, were you more like in the SDNY at that point, or were you already on doing the TV circuits at that time?
Did you say Bridgegate? Is that what you said?
Yeah, because I remember. I mean, that was North. Yeah. You're a Jersey cat. That's North. That was obviously. Yeah, go ahead.
So no, that was obviously the George Washington Bridge.
Fiasco.
No, I was with the state attorney general. So I was a prosecutor from 2004 until 2018. So obviously, when you're a prosecutor, you can't publicly comment. Right. Although later in my career, when I was in charge of the criminal division at the AG's office, I was allowed to talk about our cases, but only things that were in the public record and not to give opinions, but to just do quick hits and that kind of thing. When I got out of the AG's office in the middle of 2018, a friend of mine who was doing this for CNN and MSNBC said, hey, they're looking for good people to talk about. It was right in the midst of the Robert Mueller investigation. They said that they want good people who could talk about this in an interesting way. Would you want to try it? And believe me when I tell you, this was never the plan. But I said, yeah, I would. I think I'd enjoy doing that. And I just started doing segments with CNN and then MSNBC, and then I did a few with Fox News and with BBC and Bloomberg and you name it. And then after a few months of that, CNN offered to sign me as a legal analyst. So I signed on with CNN in the fall of 2018, so about a year and a half ago, and I'm still with them and hopefully will be for the foreseeable future. I mean, it's a remarkable experience to sort of be on the front lines as news unfolds. I mean, just in the time I've been there, we've had Mueller, we've had presidential impeachment. We've had, I think, unprecedented attacks on the independence of the Justice Department, which I feel very strongly about standing up against, and now coronavirus, which even has a legal element to it as well. I'm doing weekly hits on questions about the legal aspects of the coronavirus. Can governors quarantine people? The prison question that you just asked me is a common one I'm getting. So, I'm really grateful to just have any chance to sort of explain to the public not only how these things work, but why these things matter.
Elie, I'm going to try to ask this as a layperson because, we are interconnected. We gain information almost instantaneously. So in some cases, like you find out about some horrible hazing incident at a college and somebody dies and the parents, and there's video of it, and parents want to sue the fraternity and in litigation. 30 years ago, I mean, that stuff, a lot of stuff went down, and there wasn't. Have we become a more litigious society? And I guess the overarching question is some of the unnecessary litigation, not the stuff that's clearly legitimate, like we talked about, but I don't know what the right word is. People that, the more money you have, the more you can flaunt it and have frivolous stuff. And I wonder, when it comes to this idea of litigation, has it given the ability of someone like Trump or people like that to water down the competence and integrity of the Justice Department?
Right. That's a good question. So are we more or less litigious now than we used to be? I don't actually know the answer to that. I suspect we're more litigious, and I think we certainly are litigious in different ways, meaning more willing to sue each other and run into court. And I think as the world evolves, litigation evolves. But let me say this. Our system is really pretty good at separating the wheat from the chaff when it comes to lawsuits.
Dig.
And you will rarely see someone get paid. Look, people file silly lawsuits all the time. I mean, when the Houston Astros scandal happened, there was lawsuits from season ticket holders who felt cheated out of that. Silly, like grandstandy stuff like that. But those kind of lawsuits are never going to yield a verdict in favor of the plaintiff, right? And our system is pretty good. I mean, ultimately, you have to put your proof on the table, and ultimately it has to be a legally recognizable harm that you suffered. Now, where I think we get into problems, and I think you talked about this, is people who use litigation sort of as a cudgel because they know that their opponents can't really afford to fight back.
Exactly.
And I think Donald Trump has done this at various times throughout his career, and he's not the only one. The idea is, look, I have tons of resources. I'll just sue you. Maybe it's not going anywhere, but you're going to not have the 6 figures it's going to take to hire a lawyer and defend yourself. So either you're going to fold, you're going to settle, you're going to something or other. You're going to go away. So I do think that there's an inherent sort of disparity there that our system has long struggled to deal with. The problem is there's no real way to stop somebody from bringing a lawsuit. I mean, well, there are some ways. In other words, there are some laws saying, let's say someone sues you and you win, you get the charges thrown out. You can then sue them back to get your attorney's fees paid or something like that.
Sure.
But by and large, to a certain extent that we can never really write out of our system sort of depends, not entirely, but to a degree, on people just doing the right thing and acting in good faith. And you're never going to have 100% of the people doing that, or maybe 95% even doing that. So our system is not perfect, but overall it's pretty good.
Do you think that, we've heard, I thought Mueller's report was exhaustive. I mean, again, we live in this virtual TV age, and he didn't come across as so slick and, fast. He quite frankly came across as just a very competent person who was always trying to, but he didn't have the glitz and he didn't have the speed. And I just wonder if what does your gut tell you? I mean, again, we're completely off the grid now in these unprecedented times, but do you believe that your former SDNY will go after Trump if he gets out of office after this year?
Oh boy. Well, let me a couple things. So first of all, on Robert Mueller, Robert, I never met. I don't know Robert Mueller. He was head of the FBI when I was federal prosecutor, but I know plenty of people who've worked with him. I mean, the guy is a hero. He's a
legend,
military veteran.
Yeah.
Oh, of course.
He's
and
a
I
legend.
have all the respect in the world for him. When it comes to the report he did on Russia and the 2016 election, I break it into two tracks. The investigation that he did was astonishing. The level of detail, the level of accuracy, the way he was able to find the facts and tell that story. If you read that report, is unlike anything I've ever seen in my career. The way he pieced together complicated facts and found everything he needed to find. But track two. I think he came up short legally. I think he was not clear enough in his conclusions. I think he was so trying to do this delicate dance of not saying the president should be impeached and not saying the president committed a crime. And that's why we ended up with this, what I call Yoda talk, like triple negatives of like, if the president did not commit a crime, I would so state. However,
Yoda
I
talk.
am and not able to so state.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, when he could have just said, I can't charge the president because we have a Justice Department policy against it. And by the way, that's not a Trump policy. That policy goes back decades. But we have this Justice Department policy against charging a sitting president while they're in office. That said, I find the evidence here would be sufficient to charge the president with obstruction of justice. Why the heck couldn't he have just said that? It's clear that's what he meant. But he came up with all these vague, open-ended phrasings. And then the problem is, compounding the problem is, who jumps into the breach?
Barr.
But William Barr. Exactly. And he spins it and distorts it. He holds it was actually about, if you want a timetable here, a year ago right now, Barr had that report, and this was like the 2 or 3 week period when Barr had the report and had told us all what was in it, but he didn't show us the report. And then when we saw the report a couple weeks later, we were like, what the heck? So
I remember
Bill Barr spun it, and it's game over at that point. You have one party being super, super, super cautious and trying not to say anything and tiptoeing around, and the other party saying, I have no hesitation. I'll come in here and I'll spin it and distort it all day long. I mean, sadly, that's a mismatch. And first impressions matter. And the first impression that everyone in America got was Bill Barr's spin on the report. And then when the report itself came out, it was already game over. So that's my take on sort of Robert Mueller and his investigation. What was the second part of your question? I'm trying to remember.
Well, it's a little bit more sensational. It's the idea that I mean, what you talked about before about people having money and the ability to, in Trump's case, delay stuff. He was, consistently puts. But so my question is, as it relates to his the Deutsche Bank stuff, and it relates to his whatever it is when he's exposed when he's not president. So do you think SDNY will if he doesn't get reelected, will they go after him?
So that's a great question. So first of all, as I said before, the Justice Department has a policy. We don't know actually if it's right or wrong, but it is their policy for a long time that we will not charge a sitting president while he's in office. But that policy itself says, and Mueller's report says, you certainly can charge a president once they're out of office, either because their term ended or because they got impeached or whatever. Will the SDNY do that? I think it's unlikely. Now, are there many crimes and potential crimes that Trump has committed? I think so. I think he certainly committed obstruction of justice relating to Robert Mueller. There's still open questions about tax crimes, about financial crimes, about obstruction of other types of obstruction of justice. But here's the reason I think it's going to be a difficult call for whoever comes next. If a Democrat wins really in 2020 or 2024, whatever it's going to be. Put yourself in that situation. You're the new president, or you're the new attorney general. Let's say hypothetically Joe Biden wins in 2020 and you've been named attorney general. Are you going to have your Justice Department sort of as its first order of business criminally charge the prior president? Maybe he deserves it, maybe he doesn't, but it's going to be a sideshow. It's going to be completely suck all of the attention, oxygen, focus off everything you're doing and putting all on that one thing. And I think it just feels, in a certain sense, un-American to put handcuffs on and criminally charge the last president. I mean, that's the kind of thing you see in other countries that we don't want to be like. And so I think the challenge is, on the one hand, the president, I believe, has committed crimes before he was in office, during the campaign, and certainly while in office. And how do you just not do anything about that? On the other hand, when you think about it realistically and practically, it's kind of tough to envision. And I wonder if there might be some middle point type solution where you have a commission or something, and I know commissions aren't fully satisfying, but you have some sort of investigation, you reach a conclusion, here's what we find that the president committed these crimes. That said, in the overall interest of justice and the national best interest, we don't think it's the right thing to proceed with charges. Or look, he might even try to pardon himself before he leaves office, which is an open legal question whether that's something that you can do or not. We don't know the answer.
Elie, I mean, to me, yes, it would be a sideshow and it would wrangle up his, what I'm concerned about is this unfortunately large minority of Trumpists who are just so reactive in their behavior, and so I look at it and I say, if you don't do anything, then that doesn't create necessarily a sideshow. But if you let it go if you don't hold him accountable at all, to me, I mean, listen, man, you saw this video, I'm sure already, of this, this cat, the Navy guy, warning his people about coronavirus, and he's being let off the ship to a standing ovation because Trump fired him. I mean, there's some kind of cognitive dissonance going on that to me is a danger to democracy in general. I can't see how it's going to play out. But to me, Trump supporters, and I don't want to paint with a broad brush because I have friends here in Tucson that I have immense intellectual respect for, and they're very scholarly people, and they think Trump, for certain reasons, is exactly the right person for the right time. And I mean, it's not just, but it's this mob mentality people that need to be quashed. And I don't know, because to me, I just go back to, I'll ask you this, because I've been saying this for a long time. I started my show in 2011, the day after Gabrielle Giffords was almost assassinated, and that was just timing, okay? I didn't know, I didn't have my voice. I didn't know I was going to go out and interview musicians. I didn't even know I was going to still be on the air after 9 years. But the point is that in looking back, one reason I got on the show is I was just completely perplexed, being that we're both Gen Xers. I was at Boston University in the late 90s. They said, we're clearly in a post-racial time. We went through the civil rights movement. Everything's fine. And then all of a sudden it was like birtherism, and like they were attacking Obama. They were just treating, and he wasn't Bernie Sanders. He was just a moderate dude. And so I couldn't understand what the heck was going on. And so I started to explore all this different, cultural bias, racism stuff. But my question for you is this: looking back on it, my feeling, it's just my feeling as a journalist, but I feel what you just talked about is exactly what Obama and Eric Holder should have done to Jamie Dimon and all those bankers in 2009. He should have perp walked them just to basically say, you're not above the law. You effed up so many people's lives, and you're going to be, and maybe they'd get off. But you know what? He would have been, in my mind, and maybe I'm wrong, he went after what was demonized as Obamacare, socialism, and then they were able to attack him on that. To me, it's this accountability thing about what gets us into a mess to begin with, and then are you willing to just not worry about the optics and do what's just right? And I feel like that was something that, and it would have taken a lot of balls, but I wanted to get your thoughts on that.
Right. So there's an interesting sort of dilemma here, which is how do you sort of demand accountability? And by the way, there's a really interesting book about the Justice Department's historical. It's not specific to either party. It sort of crosses both parties. But over the last couple of decades, the Justice Department's declining ability or willingness to go after white-collar criminals. It's called, I don't know if I'm allowed to curse. I won't curse. It's called the Chicken S Club. And it's by a well-respected journalist. And it's really interesting to read. And they talk about this, sort of what things have happened that have made it more difficult for DOJ, or made DOJ less just culturally likely to go after CEOs. But I also want to say this. Don't look to the criminal justice system as the only method of accountability, because the criminal justice system needs to be reserved for criminals. And when I say that, there's people all over this country every day commit acts that are obnoxious, offensive, greedy, immoral, unethical, but that's not the same thing as criminal. And so when you talk about perp walking and Jamie Dimon or something like this, I don't know enough about the specifics, but in order to do that, you have to have proof that you can put in front of a jury, not just that he was greedy, not just that he was irresponsible, not just that he did a terrible job or acted like a scumbag, but that he broke a specific criminal law, and you have to be able to prove it, as we said before, to a unanimous jury beyond a reasonable doubt. And so
Absolutely.
Whether we're talking about a CEO or the president, there are a lot of means of accountability, and maybe none of them are quite as satisfying as perp walk. But our system has a lot of different ways to ensure accountability, and some of that is just sort of public opinion and public opprobrium. So, I think when you think about it as these people need to be cuffed and perp walked, it's a little all or nothing, and there are shades in between.
So after a long day at the offices of SDNY, was there like a stealth blues bar or jazz club, or what kind of live music was Elie Honig taking in back in the day after, when you just needed to cut the edge a little bit?
Oh, this is great. So there is a great defense lawyer. He's been doing this forever. His name is Murray Richmond. Okay. And Murray, this show, Better Call Saul, right? It's actually, I think it's either based on Murray or it ripped off Murray, because Murray, his thing was, don't worry, Murray. No worries, Murray. Right? He represented mobsters. He has his own radio show in New York. He's a wonderful guy, great storyteller. And one of the things that Murray told me, he said, when I'm getting ready to give a jury address, to speak to a jury, I sing. In my car, I sing opera. He has a great voice, great deep voice. I think his father maybe was an opera singer. And he said, it just loosens me up sort of mentally, emotionally, and and it loosens up my vocal cords and that kind of thing. And I always loved that. And I would try to do it. The problem is I would take Jersey, take the path in, so it's a little hard to.
It's hard to croon. It's hard to croon on the New Jersey Transit. Yeah.
But you do listen to music like on your way in, like
Absolutely.
the way you see these NBA players with their headphones on where they walk into the arena. I mean, I would and you find your certain songs that fire you up or pump you up. But still to this day, I'll hear a certain song and I'll go, oh, that was the Roberto Hernandez trial, or oh, that song takes me back to the Ciro Perón trial, or the Angelo Crisco trial. I mean, I don't know. It may just be.
I dig that, man. Wow, soundtracks of the time.
Exactly. Like whenever I hear "Jesus Walks" by Kanye, you know that song?
Sure.
So it's a great song, but it just brings me back to this one specific trial, Antonio Hernandez, and I just would listen to it. It's a great sort of pregame.
Oh, dude, I need to hear this immediately, dude. I need it. Yeah.
So yeah, exactly. So lay that song over it. But so I think everyone sort of found their own things that inspired them or fired them up or whatever. I mean, you can't go wrong. Look, I'm a Jersey guy. I don't have super sophisticated taste, but you can't go wrong with a little Springsteen.
Well, dude, let me just tell you something right now. I mean, I know you're not.
That kind of thing.
I want to tell you that some of the most authentically badass musicians come from the state of New Jersey. I mean, at the pop. Wait, hold on. I want to know. So this Kanye track, was it something that you would do at like 3 times a day, or was it a morning thing to get really in the zone? I mean, when were you putting it on?
Yeah, in the morning. So I had about a mile-long walk from the World Trade Center site to my office, and so during that walk, or walking from our office into the courthouse or whatever, just on my headphones, just going once or twice, or whatever just needed for a little bit of a boost. Sure.
But what about the live musical experience for Elie Honig? I mean, in terms of like, was it? I mean, I know. Listen, we both have families. You have kids, but I mean, were you marinating? I mean, do you recognize? I mean, clearly, Ben's talked to me about Peter, your other brother, who's also quite a music head, and But because like what you're talking about is very interesting. You're talking about getting yourself into a psychic state to really be an effective lawyer. And in some ways, the spirituality of live music is just being able to raise the collective consciousness of not only the band, but the people that are there taking it in. And I just, aside from an arena show or a stadium show, I'm just wondering if there was a club that you used to go to sort of just, cut it loose a little bit.
Yeah. No, I can't say that wasn't my humor. My brothers are both big Fish fans. And here's my thing about Fish.
Yeah.
Okay. And I saw Fish once. I was in Europe. I don't flip out. I have no interest in their music. Their music does nothing for me, but I love them and I love their fans. I love the thing about them. I love how much people get out of them and how much they enhance people's lives. I think it's the greatest thing on earth. It's not for me, but I think it's a great thing. I'm really such a boring mainstream, but I'll tell you a couple.
Just give me a couple nuggets. I mean, you're not like, it's not like you never touched that essence,
Right. So I in terms of small, I mean, I've been to all the stadium shows and everything that you'd expect. The first concert I ever went to was in the Atlantic City Pier with a friend of mine and his parents, the Beach Boys, which at the time you thought was some corny ass old 60s act. I mean, I was 13 years old. It was probably 1988. I'm rolling my eyes, and now I realize like they're musical geniuses.
Total stone geniuses. So you saw them on the Atlantic City Pier?
Yes. There was like an amphitheater set up at the time, and it may still even be there. But it was like 87 or 88. That was my first concert ever. And then the other great sort of small concert experience I had when my middle brother, when Pete was a reporter for like a local paper in Virginia, Northern Virginia, outside of D.C. He became the cultural critic. He wrote movie reviews and all this, and so he would get these tickets to exclusive events. And so he got tickets to see. This is probably 2003 or something. To see Foo Fighters at the Black Cat, which is basically like a big bar. And so there was, 100 people there. It was the size of a mid-sized fraternity party. And Foo Fighters, Dave Grohl, and Taylor, the drummer. I mean, they were just like on stage playing a two act, 15 song per act. The first act was acoustic. The second was plugged in.
Wow.
And it was just the most mind-blowing thing I've ever seen. I mean, they were superb, fantastic, and you're 6 feet away from them. So that was my best. I know it's a big stadium band, but in that sort of small clubby setting was remarkable.
Well, I just want to be clear. My musical tastes are very eccentric, but I never understood Fish either, and so I mean it's but the community is key, and having a revolution of consciousness is key. And before I let you go, Elie, it's been such an honor. Yeah. But okay, so you talk about this word. You've used a lot of words, but the one that stood out for me is good faith. You need to have good faith. By and large, in the court system, there needs to be good faith. And, when I see Barr, at the end of the day, I don't even know I think that both sides had some culpability there. It's really very interesting to know exactly what went down in that time. But the fact is, Barr came out and preempted Mueller and then kind of sabotaged the report. And every person that's doing what is, quote unquote, by the book is getting axed by Trump. So, and you said before, I have a deep faith and you do care about the integrity of the justice system. But I just want you to talk to the people around the world that will hear this, that are listening now, that are going to hear it later. Do you have faith that the institution can stand another 4 years of Trump? Because the more that you keep firing the cat on the Navy ship last night, these guys they're non-political. Trump is the most political cat. What is the silver lining here? Explain how the backstop can hold.
This is a stress test for our system, and I believe, and I'm virtually certain our system will survive it all because it's such a strong, resilient system. Let me just say a couple things. William Barr, I think, is the word terrible isn't even the right word. I think he's a disgrace as the Attorney General. I think he has zero credibility. I think he has zero independence. I've written about it. I've railed about it. Mm-hmm. I think he is only there to protect Donald Trump. I think he has bent the law. I think he has been dishonest. I think he's been a disgrace to that office. But I do think the Justice Department will survive and will thrive beyond him because there's thousands and thousands of people who work there every day who do the right thing. The notion of good faith is an important one because so much of our system, and this gets back to what we're talking about with crimes and that kind of thing, so much of our system is built not so much on laws, we have laws and they're very important, but on norms. Norms meaning those unwritten rules, but those things that are just widely understood and expected. It's like the unwritten rules in baseball, right? Like you don't step on the pitcher's mouth. You don't, like,
right? No, exactly. Yeah, no, I dig. Yeah.
You don't walk around the bases after you hit a home run, right? You run around.
You know what it is. You don't do what Pete Rose did in the All-Star game in '75 and bowl over the catcher in an All-Star game and ruin their career.
Right,
yeah.
Exactly. There's a million norms in any system, whether it's a sport or our country. And one thing that this administration is doing, like no other, is just trashing those norms. And look, sometimes it can be good to trash norms. I mean, Donald Trump ran on that. He said, I'm not going to be your standard business-as-usual president. But a lot of times norms are sort of the glue that keep it together.
Right.
And when someone violates a norm, the answer isn't always or almost never is to go arrest them, because it's not a written – you can't there's no crime in breaking a norm. There's crime in
That's
breaking
exactly right.
law.
You're right on point, dude. That's what's been throwing so many people off. It's not illegal. It's just the vibe and what he's doing that's making people crazy, because it's so outside the norm.
Right, and so people say, well, what do you do if we can't throw cuffs on the guy? And I think the answer is a couple things.
Yeah.
One, you can speak out. I mean, it's part of the reason I love having this platform, because you can make sure people understand that this. And there's been times when I've said on air, there's really nothing. This happens, and there's been times when I've said on air, this is highly unusual. This is ridiculous. So making sure people understand when things happen that violate our norms, and ultimately. The ballot box, I think, is a powerful way that we can enforce norms. If people break norms in ways that we like, we vote for them. And if they break norms in ways that we don't approve of, then you vote them out of office. So I think our system is being tested, but it is resilient, and it will survive.
Tell me about Ben Honig as a father.
Oh, my God.
He is head over heels for this guy. He's reading my book to his son. I mean, I'm so proud of this cat, but
Listen,
I want you to talk about how proud you are of that cat.
Well, one thing I said about Ben at his wedding is, my kids are older, 14 and 12, but I said, imagine everyone how cool it would be to have Ben as your uncle. I mean, he is as good as an uncle as you would expect.
Amen.
And the same goes for a father. I mean, he is like, you can't even go into a laboratory and create a more dedicated father than him. So it's great to see. And I still think of him as the baby in a family, because he's 7. I mean, I still sometimes call up my son and I say, Ben, I mean, my son's
You're right.
or the other way around. But no, yeah, he's made for it.
It's cool. It's a beautiful family lineage. And Elie, let's pick up on this conversation down the road because I mean, it's amazing, man. When you transferred over to commentating and things like that, the world kind of, for better or for worse, caught fire. And so we'll do set 2 real soon, man.
Thanks very much. It was really fun.
Yeah, have a great day. Be safe.
All right. Take care.
Later on, man. Thank you to Ben Honig and Evan Cressman for putting that spiritually together. Elie Honig, just an absolutely classic human being, trying to stay on the righteous path. That's it for the Jake Feinberg Show.